Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're all doing very well whenever this video reaches you. In today's video we are going to be resuming our reading of the Grimm's Fairytales, and we'll be beginning with The Wonderful Musician. So without further ado, let's begin. There was once a wonderful musician who went quite alone through a forest and thought of all manner of things, and when nothing was left for him to think about, he said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch a good companion for myself." Then he took his fiddle from his back and played so that it echoed through the trees. It was not long before a wolf came trotting through the thicket towards him. "Ah, here is a wolf coming, I have no desire for him," said the musician, but the wolf came nearer and said to him, "Ah, dear musician, how beautifully you do play. I should like to learn that too." "It is soon learned," the musician replied, "only you have to do all that I bid you." "O musician," said the wolf, "I will obey you as a scholar obeys his master." The musician had him follow, and when they had gone part of the way together, they came to an old oak tree which was hollow inside and cleft in the middle. "Look," said the musician, "if you will learn to fiddle, put your forepaws into this crevice." The wolf obeyed, but the musician quickly picked up a stone and with one blow wedged his two paws so fast that he was forced to stay there like a prisoner. "Stay there until I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. After a while he again said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest, and I will fetch another companion," and took his fiddle and again played in the forest. It was not long before a fox came creeping through the trees towards him. "Ah, there's a fox coming," said the musician. "I have no desire for him." The fox came up to him and said, "Oh dear musician, how beautifully you do play. I should like to learn that too." "That is soon learned," said the musician. "You have only to do everything that I bid you." "O musician," then said the fox, "I will obey you as a scholar obeys his master." "Follow me," said the musician, and when they had walked part of the way, they came to a footpath with high bushes on both sides. There the musician stood still, and from one side bent a young hazel bush down to the ground and put his foot on top of it. Then he bent down a young tree from the other side as well, and said, "Now, little fox, if you will learn something, give me your left front paw." The fox obeyed, and the musician fastened his paw to the left bough. "Little fox," said he, "now reach me your right paw." And he tied it to the right bough. When he had examined whether they were firm enough, he let go, and the bushes sprang up again and jerked up the little fox so that it hung struggling in the air. "Wait there till I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. Again he said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch another companion." So he took his fiddle, and the sound echoed through the forest. Then a little hare came springing towards him. "Why, a hare is coming," said the musician. "I do not want him." "Ah, dear musician," said the hare, "how beautifully you do fiddle. I too should like to learn that." "That is soon learned," said the musician. "You have only to do everything that I bid you." "O musician," replied the little hare, "I will obey you as a scholar obeys his master." They went a part of the way together until they came to an open space in the forest, where stood an aspen tree. The musician tied a long string round the little hare's neck, the other end of which he fastened to the tree. "Now briskly, little hare, run 20 times round the tree," cried the musician, and the little hare obeyed, and when it had run round 20 times, it had twisted the string 20 times round the trunk of the tree, and the little hare was caught, and let it pull and tug as it liked, it only made the string cut into its tender neck. "Wait there till I come back," said the musician, and went onwards. The wolf, in the meantime, had pushed and pulled and bitten at the stone, and had worked so long that he had set his feet free, and had drawn them once more out of the cleft. Full of anger and rage, he hurried after the musician and wanted to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him running, he began to lament, and cried with all his might, "Brother Wolf, come to my help! The musician has betrayed me." The wolf drew down the little tree, bit the cord in two, and freed the fox, who went with him to take revenge on the musician. They found the tied-up hare, whom likewise they released, and then they sought the enemy together. The musician had once more played his fiddle as he went on his way, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who instantly, without a thought, gave up his work and came with his hatchet under his arm to listen to the music. "At last comes the right companion," said the musician, "for I was seeking a human being, and no wild beast." And he began and played so beautifully and delightfully that the poor man stood there as if bewitched, and his heart leapt with gladness. And as he thus stood, the wolf, the fox, and the hare came up, and he saw well that they had some evil design. So he raised his glittering axe and placed himself before the musician as if to say, "Whoever wishes to touch him, let him beware, for he will have to deal with me." Then the beasts were terrified and ran back into the forest. The musician, however, played once more to the man out of gratitude, and then went onwards. Our second story is The 12 Brothers. There were once upon a time a king and a queen who lived happily together and had 12 children, but they were all boys. Then said the king to his wife, "If the 13th child which you are about to bring into this world is a girl, the 12 boys shall die, in order that her possessions may be great, and that the kingdom may fall to her alone." He caused likewise 12 coffins to be made, which were already filled with shavings, and in each lay the little pillow for the dead, and he had them taken into a locked-up room, and then he gave the queen the key of it, and bade her not to speak of this to anyone. The mother, however, now sat and lamented all day long, until the youngest son, who was always with her, and whom she had named Benjamin, from the Bible, said to her, "Dear mother, why are you so sad?" "Dearest child," she answered, "I may not tell you." But he let her have no rest until she went and unlocked the room, and showed him the 12 coffins, ready filled with shavings. Then she said, "Oh, my dearest Benjamin, your father has had these coffins made for you and for your 11 brothers, for if I bring a little girl into the world, you are all to be killed and buried in them." And as she wept while she was saying this, the son comforted her and said, "Weep not, dear mother, we will save ourselves and go away." But she said, "Go forth into the forest with your 11 brothers, and let one sit constantly on the highest tree which can be found, and keep watch, looking towards the tower here in the castle. If I give birth to a little son, I will put up a white flag, and then you may venture to come back. But if I bear a daughter, I will hoist a red flag, and then fly away as quickly as you are able, and may the good God protect you. And every night I will rise up and pray for you, in winter that you may be able to warm yourself at a fire, and in summer that you may not faint away in the heat." After she had blessed her sons, they went forth into the forest. They each kept watch in turn, and sat on the highest oak, and looked towards the tower. When 11 days had passed, and the turn came to Benjamin, he saw that a flag was being raised. It was, however, not the white, but the blood-red flag which announced that they were all to die. When the brothers heard that, they were very angry, and said, "Are we all to suffer death for the sake of a girl? We swear that we will avenge ourselves. Wherever we find a girl, her red blood shall flow." Thereupon they went deeper into the forest, and in the midst of it, where it was the darkest, they found a little bewitched hut, which was standing empty. Then they said, "Here we will dwell, and you, Benjamin, who are the youngest and weakest, you shall stay at home and keep house. We others will go out and get food." Then they went into the forest and shot hares, wild deers, birds and pigeons, and whatever there was to eat. This they took to Benjamin, who had to dress it for them in order that they might appease their hunger. They lived together 10 years in the little hut, and the time did not appear long to them. The little daughter which their mother, the queen, had given birth to, was now grown up. She was good of heart and fair of face, and had a golden star on her forehead. Once, when a big washing had been done, she saw 12 men's shirts among the things, and asked her mother, "To whom do these 12 shirts belong? For they are far too small for father." Then the queen answered with a heavy heart, "Dear child, these belong to your 12 brothers." Said the maiden, "Where are my 12 brothers? I have never yet heard of them." She replied, "God knows where they are wandering about the world." Then she took the maiden and opened the chamber for her, and showed her the 12 coffins with the shavings and pillows for the head. "These coffins," said she, "were destined for your brothers, but they went away secretly before you were born." And she related to her how everything had happened. Then said the maiden, "Dear mother, weep not. I will go and seek my brothers." So she took the 12 shirts and went forth, and straight into the great forest. She walked the whole day, and in the evening she came to the bewitched hut. Then she entered it and found a young boy, who asked, "Where do you come from, and where are you bound?" and was astonished that she was so beautiful, and wore royal garments, and had a star on her forehead. And she answered, "I am a king's daughter, and I am seeking my 12 brothers, and I will walk as far as the sky's blue until I find them." She likewise showed him the 12 shirts which belonged to them. Then Benjamin saw that she was his sister, and said, "I am Benjamin, your youngest brother." And she began to weep for joy, and Benjamin wept also. And they kissed and embraced each other with the greatest love. But after this he said, "Dear sister, there is still one difficulty. We have agreed that every maiden whom we meet shall die, because we have been obliged to leave our kingdom on account of the girl." Then said she, "I will willingly die, if by doing so I can save my 12 brothers." "No," answered he, "you shall not die. Seat yourself beneath this tub until our 11 brothers come, and then I will soon come to an agreement with them." She did so, and when it was night the others came from hunting, and their dinner was ready. And as they were sitting at table and eating, they asked, "What news is there?" said Benjamin. "Don't you know anything?" "No," they answered. He continued, "You have been in the forest, and I have stayed at home, and yet I know more than you do." "Tell us then," they cried. He answered, "But promise me that the first maiden who meets us shall not be killed." "Yes," they all cried, "she shall have mercy. Only do tell us." Then said he, "Our sister is here." And he lifted up the tub, and the king's daughter came forth in her royal garments, with the golden star on her forehead, and she was beautiful, delicate, and fair. Then they were all rejoiced, and hugged, and kissed, and loved her with all their hearts. Now she stayed at home with Benjamin, and helped him with the work. The 11 went into the forest, and caught game and deer and birds, and wood pigeons, that they might have food. And the little sister and Benjamin took care to make it ready for them. She sought for the wood for cooking, and herbs for vegetables, and put the pans on the fire, so that the dinner was always ready when the 11 came. She likewise kept order in the little house, and put beautifully white clean coverings on the little beds, and the brothers were always contented, and lived in great harmony with her. Once on a time the 2 at home had prepared a beautiful meal, and when they were all together they sat down and ate and drank, and were full of gladness. There was, however, a little garden belonging to the bewitched house, where there were 12 lily flowers, which are likewise called students. She wished to give her brothers pleasure, and plucked the 12 flowers, and thought she would present each brother with one while at dinner. But at the same moment that she plucked the flowers, the 12 brothers were changed into 12 ravens, and flew away over the forest, and the house and the garden vanished likewise. And now the poor maiden was alone in the wild forest, and when she looked around, an old woman was standing near her, who said, "My child, what have you done? Why did you not leave the 12 white flowers growing? They were your brothers, who are now forevermore changed into ravens." The maiden said, weeping, "Is there no way of saving them?" "No," said the woman, "there is but one in the whole world, and that is so hard that you will not succeed at it. For you must be dumb for 7 years, and may not speak or laugh. And if you speak one single word, and only an hour of the 7 years is wanting, all is in vain, and your brothers will be killed by the one word." Then said the maiden in her heart, "I know with certainty that I shall set my brothers free," and went and sought a high tree, and she sat spinning, and she neither spoke nor laughed. Now, it so happened that a king was hunting in the forest, who had a great greyhound which ran to the tree on which the maiden was sitting, and sprang about it, whining and barking at her. Then the king came by and saw the beautiful king's daughter, with a golden star on her brow, and was so charmed with her beauty that he called to ask her if she would be his wife. She made no answer, but nodded a little with her head. So he climbed up the tree himself, carried her down, placed her on his horse, and took her home. Then the wedding was solemnized with great magnificence and rejoicing, but the bride neither spoke nor smiled. When they had lived happily together for a few years, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen, and said to the king, "This is a common beggar girl whom you have brought back with you. Who knows what impious tricks she practices secretly? Even if she is dumb and not able to speak, she still might laugh for once, for those who do not laugh have bad consciences." At first the king would not believe it, but the old woman urged this so long and accused her of so many evil things that at last the king let himself be persuaded and sentenced her to death. And now a great fire was lighted in the courtyard in which she was to be burnt, and the king stood above at the window and looked on with tearful eyes, because he still loved her so much. And when she was bound fast to the stake, and the fire was licking at her clothes with its red tongue, the last instant of the 7 years expired. Then a whirring sound was heard in the air, and 12 ravens came flying towards the place, and sank downwards, and when they touched the earth, they were her 12 brothers, whom she had saved. They tore the fire asunder, extinguished the flames, set their dear sister free, and kissed and embraced her. And now, as she dared to open her mouth and speak, she told the king why she had been dumb and never laughed. The king rejoiced when he heard that she was innocent, and they all lived in great unity until their death. The wicked stepmother was taken before the judge and put into a barrel filled with boiling oil and venomous snakes, and died an evil death. Our third story is The Pack of Ragamuffins. The rooster once said to the hen, "It is now time when our nuts are ripe, so let us go to the hill together, and for once eat our fill before the squirrel takes them all away." "Yes," replied the hen, "come, we will have some pleasure together." Then they went away to the hill, and because it was a bright day, they stayed till evening. Now I do not know whether it was that they had eaten till they were too fat, or whether they had become proud, but they would not go home on foot, and the rooster had to build a little carriage of nutshells. When it was ready, the little hen seated herself in it and said to the rooster, "You can just harness yourself to it." "Ha! I like that," said the rooster. "I would rather go home on foot than let myself be harnessed to it." "No, that is not our bargain. I do not mind being coachman and sitting on the box, but I will not drag it myself." As they were thus disputing, a duck quacked at them. "You thieving folks, who told you to go to my nut hill? Well, you shall suffer for it," and ran with open beak at the rooster. But the rooster was also not idle, and fell boldly on the duck, and at last wounded her so with his spurs that she begged for mercy, and willingly let herself be harnessed to the carriage as punishment. The little rooster now seated himself on the box, and was coachman, and thereupon they went off in a gallop, with "Duck, go as fast as you can." When they had driven a part of the way, they met 2 foot passengers, a pin and a needle. They cried, "Stop, stop," and said that it would soon be as dark as pitch, and then they could not go a step further, and that it was so dirty on the road, and asked if they could not get into the carriage for a while. They had been at the tailor's tavern by the gate, and had stayed too long over the beer. As they were thin, and did not take up too much room, the rooster let them both get in, but they had to promise him and his little hen not to step on their feet. Late in the evening they came to an inn, and as they did not like to go further by night, and as the duck was also not so strong on her feet, and fell from one side to the other, they went in. The host at first made many objections. His house was already full, and he thought they could not be very distinguished persons. But at last, as they made pleasant speeches, and told them that he should have the egg which the little hen had laid on the way, and should likewise keep the duck, which laid one every day, he at length said that they might stay the night. And now they had themselves well served, and they feasted and caroused. Early in the morning, when day was breaking and everyone was asleep, the rooster awoke the hen, brought the egg, pecked it open, and they ate it together, but they threw the shell on the hearth. Then they went to the needle, which was still asleep, took it by the head, and stuck it into the cushion of the landlord's chair, and put the pin in his towel, and at last, without more ado, they flew away over the heath. The duck, who liked to sleep in the open air, and had stayed in the yard, heard them going away, made herself merry, and found a stream down which she swam, which was much quicker way of travelling than being harnessed to a carriage. The host did not get out of bed for 2 hours after this. He washed himself and wanted to dry himself, then the pin went over his face and made a red streak from one ear to the other. After this he went into the kitchen and wanted to light a pipe, but when he came to the hearth, the eggshells darted into his eyes. "This morning everything attacks my head," said he, and angrily sat down on his grandfather's chair. But he quickly started up again and cried, "Woe is me!" For the needle had pricked him still worse than the pin, and not in the head. Now he was thoroughly angry, and suspected the guests who had come so late the night before, and when he went and looked about for them, they were gone. Then he made a vow to take no more ragamuffins into his house, for they consume much, pay for nothing, and play mischievous tricks as thanks. Our final story of today is The Little Brother and Little Sister. Little brother took his little sister by the hand and said, "Since our mother died, we have had no happiness. Our stepmother beats us every day, and if we come near her, she kicks us away with her foot. Our meals are the hard crusts of bread that are left over, and the little dog under the table is better off, for she often throws it a nice bit. May heaven pity us. If our mother only knew. Come, we will go forth together into the wide world." They walked the whole day over meadows, fields, and stony places, and when it rained, the little sister said, "Heaven and our hearts are weeping together." In the evening they came to a large forest, and they were so weary with sorrow and hunger and the long walk, that they lay down in a hollow tree and fell asleep. The next day when they awoke, the sun was already high in the sky, and shone down hot into the tree. Then the brother said, "Sister, I am thirsty. If I knew of a little brook, I would go and just take a drink. I think I hear one running." The brother got up and took the little sister by the hand, and they set off to find the brook. But the wicked stepmother was a witch, and had seen how the two children had gone away, and had crept after them stealthily, as witches do creep, and had bewitched all the brooks in the forest. Now when they found a little brook leaping brightly over the stones, the brother was going to drink out of it. But the sister heard how it said as it ran, "Whoever drinks of me will become a tiger. Whoever drinks of me will become a tiger." Then the sister cried, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wild beast, and tear me to pieces." The brother did not drink, although he was so thirsty, but said, "I will wait for the next spring." When they came to the next brook, the sister heard this also say, "Whoever drinks of me will become a wolf. Whoever drinks of me will become a wolf." Then the sister cried out, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wolf and devour me." The brother did not drink and said, "I will wait until we come to the next spring, but then I must drink. Say what you like, for my thirst is too great." And when they came to the third brook, the sister heard how it said as it ran, "Whoever drinks of me will become a deer. Whoever drinks of me will become a deer. The sister said, "Oh, I pray you, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a deer and run away from me." But the brother knelt down at once by the brook, and had bent down and drunk some of the water, and as soon as the first drops touched his lips, he lay there a young deer. And now the sister wept over her poor bewitched brother, and the little deer wept also, and sat sorrowfully near her. But at last the girl said, "Be quiet, dear little fawn, I will never, never leave you." Then she untied her golden garter and put it round the fawn's neck, and she plucked reeds and wove them into a soft cord. With this she tied the little beast and led it on, and she walked deeper and deeper into the forest. And when they had gone a very long way, they came at last to a little house. And the girl looked in, and as it was empty, she thought, "We can stay here and live." Then she sought for leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the fawn, and every morning she went out and gathered roots and berries and nuts for herself, and brought tender grass for the fawn, who ate out of her hand and was content and played round about her. In the evening, when the sister was tired and had said her prayer, she laid her head upon the fawn's back. That was her pillow, and she slept softly on it. And if only the brother had had his human form, it would have been a delightful life. For some time they were alone like this in the wilderness. But it happened that the king of the country held a great hunt in the forest. Then the blasts of the horns, the barking of the dogs, and the merry shouts of the huntsmen rang through the trees. And the fawn heard all, and was only too anxious to be there. "Oh," said he to his sister, "let me be off to the hunt. I cannot bear it any longer." And he begged so much that at last she agreed. "But," said she to him, "come back to me in the evening. I must shut my door for fear of the rough huntsman, so knock and say, 'My little sister, let me in,' that I may know you, and if you do not say that, I shall not open the door." Then the young fawn sprang away, so happy was he and so merry in the open air. The king of the huntsmen saw the pretty creature and started after him, but they could not catch him. And when they thought that they surely had him, away he sprang through the bushes and could not be seen. When it was dark, he ran to the cottage, knocked and said, "My little sister, let me in." Then the door was opened for him, and he jumped in and rested himself the whole night through upon his soft bed. The next day the hunt went on afresh, and when the fawn again heard the bugle horn and the ho-ho of the huntsman, he had no peace, but said, "Sister, let me out, I must be off." His sister opened the door for him and said, "But you must be here again in the evening and say your password." When the king and his huntsmen again saw the young fawn with the golden collar, they all chased him, but he was too quick and nimble for them. This went on for the whole day, but at last by the evening the huntsmen had surrounded him, and one of them wounded him a little in the foot, so that he limped and ran slowly. Then a hunter crept after him to the cottage and heard how he said, "My little sister, let me in," and saw that the door was open for him and was shut again at once. The hunter took notice of it all, and went to the king and told him what he had seen and heard. Then the king said, "Tomorrow we will hunt once more." The little sister, however, was dreadfully frightened when she saw that her fawn was hurt. She washed the blood off him, laid herbs on the wound, and said, "Go to your bed, dear fawn, that you may get well again." But the wound was so slight that the fawn, next morning, did not feel it any more. And when he again heard the sport outside, he said, "I cannot bear it. I must be there, and they shall not find it so easy to catch me." The sister cried and said, "This time they will kill you, and here I am alone in the forest and forsaken by all the world. I will not let you out." "Then you will have me die of grief," answered the fawn. "When I hear the bugle horns, I feel as though I must jump out of my skin." Then the sister could not do otherwise, but opened the door for him with a heavy heart, and the fawn, full of health and joy, bounded into the forest. When the king saw him, he said to his huntsman, "Now chase him all day long till nightfall, but take care that no one does him any harm." As soon as the sun had set, the king said to the hunter, "Now come and show me the cottage in the wood." And when he was at the door, he knocked and called out, "Dear little sister, let me in." Then the door opened, and the king walked in, and there stood a maiden more lovely than any he had ever seen. The maiden was frightened when she saw not her little fawn, but a man come in who wore a golden crown upon his head. But the king looked kindly at her, stretched out his hand, and said, "Will you go with me to my palace and be my dear wife?" "Yes, indeed," answered the maiden, "but the little fawn must go with me. I cannot leave him." The king said, "It shall stay with you as long as you live, and shall want nothing." Just then he came running in, and the sister again tied him with the cord of reeds, took it in her own hand, and went away with the king from the cottage. The king took the lovely maiden upon his horse and carried her to his palace, where the wedding was held with great pomp. She was now the queen, and they lived for a long time happily together. The fawn was tended and cherished, and ran about in the palace garden. But the wicked stepmother, because of whom the children had gone out into the world, thought all the time that the sister had been torn to pieces by the wild beasts in the wood, and that the brother had been shot for a fawn by the huntsman. Now, when she heard that they were so happy and so well off, envy and hatred rose in her heart and left her no peace. And she thought of nothing but how she could bring them again to misfortune. Her own daughter, who was ugly as night and had only one eye, grumbled at her and said, "A queen? That ought to have been my luck." "Never mind," answered the old woman, and comforted her by saying, "When the time comes, I shall be ready." As time went on, the queen delivered a pretty little boy, and it happened when the king was out hunting. The old witch took the form of the chambermaid, went into the room where the queen lay, and said to her, "Come, the bath is ready. It will do you good, and give you fresh strength. Make haste before it gets cold." The daughter also was close by, so they carried the weakly queen into the bathroom, and put her in the bath. Then they shut the door and ran away. But in the bathroom they had made a fire of such deadly heat that the beautiful young queen was soon suffocated. When this was done, the old woman took her daughter, put a nightcap on her head, and laid her in bed in place of the queen. She gave her too the shape and look of the queen, only she could do nothing for the lost eye. But in order that the king might not see it, she was to lie on the side on which she had no eye. In the evening, when he came home and heard that he had a son, he was heartily glad, and was going to the bed of his dear wife to see how she was. But the old woman quickly called out, "For your life, leave the curtains closed. The queen ought not see the light yet, and must have rest." The king went away, and did not find out that a false queen was lying in the bed. But at midnight, when all slept, the nurse, who was sitting in the nursery by the cradle, and who was the only person awake, saw the door open, and the true queen walked in. The queen took the child out of the cradle, laid it on her arm, and suckled it. Then she shook up its pillow, laid the child down again, and covered it with the little quilt. And she did not forget the fawn, but went into the corner where it lay, and stroked its back. Then she went quite silently out to the door again. The next morning the nurse asked the guards whether anyone had come into the palace during the night, but they answered, "No, we have seen no one." She came thus many nights and never spoke a word. The nurse always saw her, but she did not dare to tell anyone about it. When some time had passed in this manner, the queen began to speak of the night, and said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? Twice shall I come, then never more." The nurse did not answer, but when the queen had gone again, went to the king and told him all. The king said, "Ah, heavens, what is this? Tomorrow night I will watch by the child." In the evening he went into the nursery, and at midnight the queen appeared again, and said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? Once will I come, then never more." And she nursed the child, as she did before she disappeared. The king dared not speak to her, but on the next night he watched again. Then she said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? This time I come, then never more." Then the king could not restrain himself. He sprang towards her and said, "You can be none other than my dear wife." She answered, "Yes, I am your dear wife, and at the same moment she received life again, and by God's grace became fresh, rosy, and full of health. Then she told the king the evil deed which the wicked witch and her daughter had been guilty of towards her. The king ordered both to be led before the judge, and judgment was delivered against them. The daughter was taken into the forest, where she was torn to pieces by wild beasts. But the witch was cast into the fire and burnt miserably. And as soon as she was burnt, the fawn changed his shape and received his human form again, so that sister and brother lived happily together all their lives. I hope that you guys have enjoyed today's video, and if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a little like and subscribe to my channel and comment with some of your thoughts. So with that, I wish you all a very good day or night, and I hope to see you in the next video.